sounds like everyone here at the table has expressed that our traditions are very much in support of organ donation. But I do know when speaking with families that they've expressed a number of spiritual and religious concerns about organ donation that eventually leads those families to say no. And so I thought perhaps we could address some of those potential concerns here and just kind of talk about that and how are some ways that organ donation can be something that also works with someone's religious needs or spiritual needs.
To me, it's very important to be here and participate in this conversation because Judaism does overwhelmingly support organ donation as a very powerful, very beautiful thing that we can do to save lives. And my hope is to share some of those perspectives from the Jewish tradition in today's conversation.
One of my assigned units is both intensive care units, medical intensive care and surgical intensive care. If the conversation comes around to organ donation, some will wonder about their faith, and my words to them essentially speak to the fact that our God is a God of life. And what we are doing and what their loved one can do is to help someone else's life go on, and that something of life can come out of their tragedy.
Clearly, for me, the Catholic faith very much supports organ donation. It is a beautiful, beautiful act of love in order to save and to help another person.
To me, one of the most beautiful things that you can express as a person is the willingness to share. And if that's organ donation, I think that's ultimately not a sacrifice at all, but it's a wonderful gift that you can give forward to people.
In the ancient rabbinic text, in the text called the Talmud, that talks about the notion that the world was created initially with one single life, one single person. And that is a reminder or a lesson that to save a life, it's as if you've saved the entire world. And so when we connect that into the ideas around organ donation, if you save someone's life with a donation of an organ, it's as if you've saved the entire world.
Just in my own kind of faith journey, a verse that's really struck me is when Jesus talks about what it's like to lay one's life down for one's friends. And to me that speaks very closely to organ donation, even if you may never meet the recipient, even if you may never know who this person is. The act of laying one's life down in order to help another, it seems very, very central to my own personal faith background.
And amen to that. I mean, for Jesus, the definition of friendship is the willingness to lay down one's life for one's friend. And this organ donation is certainly very much a part of Christian friendship. Well, I can think of a particular family that I was chatting with about end-of-life decisions and really encouraging them to get in the Catholic tradition to have discernment. Instead of really waiting to the moment of death and then having to decide in just a very few seconds on such a critically important decision around this beautiful act of dying and organ donation. And the gift of discernment is the capacity of taking time. And it seems such a beautiful process in which really for them, their whole funeral planning was their last act of love, and that's how they kind of wanted to describe it.
Another piece of writing those ethical wills is the chance to put forth ideas about do not resuscitate orders and things of that nature, but also organ donation, because as you said, Father, the most important of all is that these decisions, if possible, are not done in a moment of crisis, having to be done under great stress, having to be done in a moment's notice. As much as we can do as spiritual leaders to encourage families to think through these, to define our values and to make those decisions known, that's an incredible gift that we leave to our loved ones.
It is so important to be able to get clergy and faith leaders to help their folks talk about it before it's a crisis, because generally what we're dealing with in the hospital is people who are in crisis and grieving and numb and in shock, and we have to help them make these kinds of decisions. If you make that decision ahead of time, you've given your family a gift. They don't even have they don't have to deal with it. Like, this is what he wants.
I bet if you have these opportunities and you start discussing it more, you will find people within your own communities who have been impacted by donation already. I have been one of those people who have gone around to different area faith communities and shared more about donation, provided education, and inevitably every single time someone from the congregation will come up to me afterwards and say, my son was a donor, or my wife was saved because of a donor. Not only can they conceptually think about their loved one living on in whatever way that they conceive of that in their tradition, but they can also think they are literally helping another person live. So it's my job to call them afterwards and tell them, your loved one saved the lives of 3 people, or 4 people, or 5 people. There is nothing like that.
Yeah.
And the more we can do to help families to see that there is real hope and real good in this decision. And it may be a hard decision to think about, it may be a hard choice, but to see that, to see the beauty and the goodness of that, the more we can share with families about that, I think the better we help our families who are grieving the loss of their loved